This video will be the only video you will need to watch on how to chop and slice onions safely, as well as giving a lot of tips on how to handle the knife, the different types of blade, and the process of chopping and slicing the onion and the grips you can use. I'm Russell Phipps, and this is my kitchen Manna with Spice. I have here a Japanese knife, a Western style knife. You can actually see the difference straight away. Using the Western style one, I would hold my knife like this. If I put my finger here, you will see it automatically drops down. My Japanese knife, again, if I put my finger there, you will see it is blade heavy again. But this style knife, I pinch it. This finger is there and I can pinch it and I have far more control. Again, a Japanese one. The depth of this knife far greater than the other one, and this allows me to cut larger vegetables. I'd put my finger there, pinch it, and you can move it to and fro. If you are unhappy using a larger knife, I have a 6-inch knife here. This one, however, is handle heavy, but because it's so small, I will actually hold it like that and I'm pinching the blade rather than the handle, because I actually find this handle a bit short for me. But the most important thing on all these knives is that when you're cutting vegetables, they have to be sharp. A blunt knife is dangerous. The important thing when cutting an onion, first of all, is just make sure it's stable and your board isn't moving. Cut the non-root end and have somewhere to put your peelings, because really you don't want them on your board. It's your chopping board, it's a surface to work on, and the less clutter you have on it, the better. Turn it upside down and just cut down the centre. I tend to just cut the root off very close to the root, and that's purely so I don't get the root itself and the bits of the root on the chopping board. Peel it. Sometimes you get a very, very fine pith left on here. That pith is the part that will cause your fingers to slip if you don't take it off. I use this finger as a guide. Now some people do it that way and use that finger. It's what you're comfortable with. And I slice it as close to the root as possible. As it's now getting too close for me to handle, I'll just move my hand out the way. Turn it round. For fine slices, you can put 1 or 2 cuts up there, using my finger as a guide. Now, when moving the onion, this is another tip, you notice I use the back of the blade. I don't use the sharp edge, I use the back. And if I want to pick it up, I can just move it like that. Here's another little tip. Always have a slightly damp cloth with you, because after you've cut your onion, especially with thinner blades, if you just wipe it, it will stop your vegetable from sticking to it. I'm going to do the same again, but this time I'm going to make it chunky. If you look, I'll bring it down, but I'm not doing as many cuts. I'm not going to cut it this way this time, because I want this to be slightly chunky. I'm just going straight through it, and there we have a coarsely chopped onion. I'm now going to show you a slightly different way of doing it, using a chef's knife. Now some people will say, take the skin off plus the first layer of the onion. Now that's absolutely fine, you can do that. In fact, in some ways it is quicker. And I don't know if you can see there, this is that pith I was telling you about that you want to remove. It is the red onion that I tend to take the skin off plus the first layer. I'm doing this as a demonstration, and you can see the pith again there. Because of you've got a point, you can get very close in. I'm using that as my guide. Now for safety, some people do it that way. I personally don't like that because I can't see the blade. I want to be able to see the blade, so I tend to do that. Again, pinching it very finely. I'm actually going forward and pushing down. I'm not chopping. And you can do the same going backwards. When wiping it, you notice I pull my finger away from the blade. Slicing onions. And you want to cut it this time away from the root, because you're going to be using all of the onion. Now, I slice onions this way. You can get it really fine. If I come at an angle, you can probably see how fine you can get that. I actually find you can get the finer cuts by coming back towards you. I don't really need this to be fine, so I'm just going to move that out of the way so I can demonstrate it. As you come towards the end, where it gets to your finger, just move it over and carry on. And I'm going to demonstrate that again, but this time with the other knife I've got. Pinch grip, go there. Now this one, because of the rounded tip, it's actually easier coming back towards you if you want to do the finer cuts. Smaller knife. You've actually got less of a blade, so you've got to keep an eye on it if you're using a smaller one. Now this time I used a whole knife, and if you look at what I'm doing there, because it's a smaller blade, it's easier to pull it towards you. With a Western knife, I'm happy to do this. With my Japanese knives, I'm not. The actual edge of the blade is so fine, whereas with the Western knives, as you saw earlier on, they're a lot thicker. So you can, if you want, use it, the heel of the knife, which is there to help peel. I'm going to slice this one so you can see. And you notice that I'm always now, with the smaller blade, I'm bringing it towards me rather than away. Quite difficult with a small blade to me doing that. This was my very first chef knife. This knife is about 35 years old. Because the blade is so much heavier, you can go through it. Personally, for slicing thin slices of onion, I don't find this knife to be brilliant, purely because of the thickness and you've got to control it more. I can do it, but I find it a lot easier with the Japanese knives. We've got quite a few bits of these on the end. I'm literally just going to cut that end off. And you want to keep it, again, as much of this on as you can, because it is the chemicals come out of the root which will cause you to cry. Cut it in half, and you can probably see this splits it more. I'm going to slice with this one, and I want you to try and look at the difference that the blade does. Because of the thickness of the blade, you've got to use the point. You notice I'm going forward then down. Moving my hands across for safety. I'm going to slice it through. And I'm having to pinch this a lot more to keep it together. Holding it together, again, that pinch grip, I'm using that finger. As mentioned, a lot of people do it that way. I personally just find it easier that way. Bigger knife, I'm pushing it away from me. I'm not, again, chopping. You see how fine that is? Even with that thick knife. Finally, because of the thickness of the blade, it's doing that. I'm pushing away. I'm exaggerating. But you've got to keep an eye on it more. And that's why I say I find it harder using this style of knife to get a thin cut. And you can actually hear it slipping. You can see that it's just slipping. I'm just going to give you a demonstration. Same length, but a Japanese one. As you can see there, it's not a problem. The blade's so much thinner, it just goes straight through it. Slicing a whole onion. You want to just slice the top end off. Now, there's two thoughts on slicing onions. If you want to keep it completely round, then you obviously have to keep a grip of it and slice it down. But as you can see, it's wobbling a bit. If you're not worried about keeping it round, the safest way, just take a small piece off the bottom and you can lay it flat. So it won't move, which then means you've got more control in slicing it. And I'm deliberately going slow so you can actually see. Please note again, I'm not sliding, I'm not twisting my blade to knock it off. If you saw there, I flicked it off with my finger. If you do that with a Japanese knife, when the blade is on the wood, or sorry, on your chopping board, you just blunten the edge. I hope that has helped. I've tried to go through all the different ways of chopping an onion safely and using different blades and the handles of the blades. Please let me know what you think in the comments and which way you would prefer. I have seen another way of doing an onion, which I will demonstrate now. Right, this is the final way of cutting an onion that I have seen. I personally don't do this. Cut the top off. You can see all the root there. Cut as close to the root as possible. Cut in half. rather than cut it straight down, you cut it at 45 degrees. I'm going to have to do it this way so you can see. Then turn it round. Because you haven't gone all the way through to the root, you cut it again at 45 degrees between the other cuts you've done. It is still held together by the root. If you want a really fine cut, you can just go through here, but I think you'll find that if you then just go straight down, you can get a very, very finely chopped onion. Thank you for watching. I'll put some other videos from my channel. I'll see you in my next video.